All occupants of an East London block of flats are accounted for after it's consumed by a fire.
More than 16 hours after the fire started, there are still flames and smoke billowing out of the top. How it started is still not clear.
And around 70 firefighters responded to a fire at another tower block in East London this afternoon. The fire service said part of a flat and balcony in Blackwall were alight on the 25th floor of a 45-storey building. There are no reports of any injuries.
Meanwhile, there's been a second fire in a tower block in East London this afternoon. The blaze broke out in a 45-storey building in Blackwall just after 1 o'clock. Locals are being told to keep their doors and windows closed to avoid the smoke. The cause is unknown.
Well, meanwhile, this lunchtime, around 70 firefighters tackled another fire in Blackwall in East London. Videos online showed smoke coming out of the side of the building on Biscayne Avenue. A flat was alight on the 25th floor of the 45-storey tower block.
Now, a fire that's engulfed a block of flats in East London has been brought under control. The building was undergoing work to remove and replace cladding, and the London Fire Brigade confirmed that it had a number of fire safety issues known to them. More than 80 people were evacuated and 2 were taken to hospital. Helena Wilkinson reports.
This is the block of flats in East London engulfed by flames at the peak of the devastating fire. More than 100 residents live here. Most will have been asleep when it broke out. It must have been terrifying. The London Fire Brigade was called at 2:44 this morning. A major incident was declared with a huge emergency response. 45 fire engines were sent with 225 firefighters. The first of them were at the scene within 5 minutes of the call. Residents have been describing the terrifying moment of what happened in the block of flats in the early hours of this morning. One woman who is 6 months pregnant has told us that as they were making their way down the stairs, the smoke became heavier and everyone was coughing. She also said there was no warning and no fire alarm. Other residents spoke of the terrifying situation.
There was a lot of smoke, we couldn't breathe, and we managed to reach downstairs. And when we went in the hall, there was a firefighter that said, just run across the other side of the building, basically.
There was no alarm. We didn't hear any alarm. There is no sprinklers in that building at all.
As Red Cross volunteers sorted clothing for people, a resident who was at work at the time said his 16-year-old son was inside the flat when the fire took hold.
He tried and get himself through the window, and that's the fifth floor. So he got himself out through the window. Luckily, there were scaffoldings there, so he jumped down on the scaffolding, and I guess the fire guys put the ladder up and get him.
The cause of the fire is not yet known. Work had been underway to remove non-compliant cladding on the flats, and there were already issues known to authorities. Not far from the flats, a rest centre has been set up for residents unable to return to their homes.
An extensive search and rescue operation took place following a simultaneous evacuation of the building, and I'm pleased to announce that everyone has been accounted for. This was a very dynamic and challenging incident, and we all know undoubtedly there will be concerns around the fire safety issues present within the building, which will form part of our report.
At the scene, firefighters are still trying to contain the smoke billowing out. Long ladders have been used to pour water on the top of the building. Locals have been told to keep their windows closed. The investigation into how the fire started will be the next step. That there weren't more injuries seems extraordinary.
And we can join Helena live at the scene now. A terrifying day for the residents, Helena.
Yes, absolutely, Rita. You might be able to make out just behind us the building a huge amount of smoke still billowing out. We've also seen flames as well coming out of the top of the building, and it's more than 16 hours since it started. We've heard stories throughout the day from residents, desperate stories. One resident described it as a horror movie. Another woman said that she didn't hear the fire alarm in the flat where she was. And as I mentioned, most people in the building would have been asleep at the time of the fire. This building is one of thousands of buildings that are waiting to have their cladding removed. We don't know what caused the fire yet, but it comes 7 years after the Grenfell Tower fire, in which 72 people died. And the public inquiry into that is going to report back. It's going to be published next month. In terms of the residents here, they are still out of their homes. We've heard from the London Fire Brigade, who say that it's going to be days still before they are able to finish the job here. And as you can see here, flames still coming out of the top of that building. A terrifying ordeal for those who were inside, and remarkable that not more people were injured.
7 years on from the Grenfell fire, and today London saw another cladded tower block engulfed by fire, this time in Dagenham. 2 people remain in hospital. Many have lost everything, but thankfully there have been no fatalities. Today, the London Fire Brigade said the building was known to have a number of fire safety issues, as Olivia Guthrie reports.
The London Fire Brigade says it will take days to get this blaze under control, even as the Mayor has stood down a major incident here. More than 200 firefighters and 45 fire engines have been deployed in Dagenham. 4 people were treated at the scene, 2 were taken to hospital.
Trousers?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Volunteers were bringing food and clothing to the 100 or so other residents evacuated to a nearby leisure centre, where the enormity of what's happened was just starting to sink in.
As soon as I got out the door, there was so much smoke in the corridor, like you couldn't see anything and you couldn't breathe at all. So I just like went like this, my hoodie, and then I just ran out as fast as I could.
Firefighters have been battling this blaze since they were called here just before 2:45 in the early hours of this morning. The building had been undergoing works to remove non-compliant cladding, and the scaffolding being used in those works, as well as the building itself, were engulfed in flames.
It's a scene reminiscent of another tower block fire. It's been 7 years since the Grenfell disaster that killed 72 people, a fire made worse by highly flammable cladding on the building. It's not clear what started today's fire or whether the non-compliant cladding was a factor in how it spread. London Fire Brigade are investigating claims no smoke alarms went off here in the early hours. It's emerged safety concerns about this building were raised as long ago as 2020, that it didn't comply with regulations.
It's very early to talk about how and why the fire extended in the way that it did. Fire investigation are on scene now, looking at the fire spread, looking at its severity and looking why it travelled in the way that it did.
Fortunately, no one lost their life here today, but as the fire decimated so many people's homes, many will have lost almost everything else. Olivia Guthrie, ITV News.